Hello all, and welcome to this. And yes, it's been a while, but work sucks, and that happens. And yeah, but I thought I would come on here because, of course, lots of things happened on Dynamite. The biggest probably being, if you take, well, the biggest probably being Sting, though the more long lasting might be Sting, but probably be this whole angle with Impact and Kenny Omega. And of course, as everything was going on, the big whole thing was winter was coming, and it looked like the winter was coming with Sting, and a lot of people have said that, and that might not be the case. Now, I have no proof of this. This was just me being bored and popped into my head because my mind is always going in some weird way, and as so, of course, winter is coming is from Game of Thrones, the Song of Fire and Ice, whatever you want to call it. It's a big part of that, and if you don't know any of that, you're probably going to get, if you plan on watching it at some later time. Sorry, you're going to get spoiled stuff because to me, I think maybe, just maybe, we might get this thing where instead of winter is coming as Sting, winter is coming is the kickoff to an angle that is very reminiscent of Game of Thrones, Song of Fire and Ice, and what that is. So, if you don't know what Game of Thrones is, if you kind of have an idea, the basis of it is basically you have a kingdom gets all hell breaks loose. You have a war basically trying to decide who's going to sit on the Iron Throne, which is where the king sits, and that's what really the battle is about. The whole Winter of Coming is a completely different part of the story, because while all of that's going on, there are basically the zombies that are getting ready to come down and destroy everybody. And there's a whole bunch of other things. But the basis of everything is you have these different houses that are all vying to get to the Iron Throne. So I put this on Twitter, but if you think of it in that way, you have Kenny, right? You have Kenny, who's been this obnoxious heel, who is the current AEW champion. But what if the Iron Throne isn't necessarily about a single belt? We know that that Kenny Omega is the AAA champion. We know that he is now the or the AEW champion. Very easily, since he's going to be on Impact, he could be like, I want belts, and I want the Impact Championship, right? So basically, that's your Lannisters. Impact, Kenny Omega, your Lannisters. Then you have the Starks, which would probably be AEW, because this is primarily, you would imagine, a big AEW thing, and the Starks were the heroes to the larger degree. So that would be them. Then you have possibly like New Japan being the Targaryens. The Targaryens were the ones with the dragons, right? And they were the ones that everyone was kind of waiting for, because they were the Daenerys, Dany, had the biggest, nastiest army. She did. She just had the biggest, nastiest army. Not only did she have dragons, she had these horsemen that could basically beat everybody. Everybody. It was like they did a scene in the movie, and you're just like, yeah, this is not good. She can just destroy everybody. And she has dragons. On top of these, she has these horsemen dudes. But basically, they're the big nasty. They're not, I should say, the big nasty. They're like the most powerful. They're the ones that have everything. Then you have like ROH. ROH would be the Iron Isles, who were kind of these people who were out trying to regain their honor in some ways. There are different factions within that. Then you had Dorn, who wanted revenge and stuff, and that would kind of, but they were kind of like bit players. Not, I shouldn't say bit players, because in the books they're kind of a bigger deal. But they're kind of they're players, but they're not big players, right? And there's your AAA. But if you even go farther than that, if you basically say what this is setting up a thing where maybe we have deals laid out, right? I'm going to go through this, where basically you have everybody in wrestling, has decided to work together as much as they can, and I'll get to that part too, with the exception of WWE. WWE is out of the equation on this. So you basically easily could have most of the top 10 promotions in the world, right? And if we could run down most, take WWE out, then you have New Japan, CMLL, AAA. New Japan has a deal with CMLL. AEW has a deal with AAA. I think, does Impact have a deal with AAA too? I think they do too. But anyway, so AAA, AEW, Dragon Gate. Dragon Gate's maybe iffy. Then you go to what we'll say Ring of Honor. Then probably in some form you're probably talking Noah, All Japan, and Impact. That's probably, but are we at 10 yet? We're probably about 10. And then maybe if you need someone, you can add like MLW or someone else that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. But you can get most of the top 10. And even though some of these promotions would not work with each other, i.e. AAA and CMLL, you have an out because you can basically do these angles without the AAA guys and the CML guys ever having to kind of work together, because they can work with, because CML, of course, also works with ROH, and you can kind of have everyone, they can kind of work with the people they can work with, and then however that. But the basis of this is that the Iron Throne is not necessarily a belt, but it's a title that is not a belt, which would be best in the world. And what if all of this is basically we get everyone going to war with each other, and everyone saying, okay, who really is the best wrestler? Not the best promotion, the best wrestler in the world. And maybe, just maybe, that's what all this is. I could be completely wrong. I could be absolutely completely wrong and completely overthinking this, because you have way too much politics that go in this. A lot of this really would have to be on New Japan agreeing to work with Impact and agreeing to kind of work with AAA. If you had Dragon Gate in there, and you don't probably need Dragon Gate per se, but if Dragon Gate, you would have to have New Japan agree to work with Dragon Gate. Don't know about that. They would probably far more easily work with All Japan and Noah, though. Not that anyone really cares about. I guess Noah's gotten better, right? But anyways, there you go. So you can have this crazy, crazy thing that we don't even see in front of us yet, and maybe not even see the full picture yet. Maybe, I would say that probably the better story in all of this, if you could pull this off, and you can't because you're missing two key characters who are in WWE, would be if this was all the different offshoots, the different things from Bullet Club. Think about that, where you basically bring in like everyone that's ever been in the Bullet Club for the most part, but of course you have AJ and you have Prince Devitt not in, can't use them, so that kind of makes that null and void. But that was kind of my thinking. That was kind of that maybe we think, oh, winter is coming. That's Sting. Maybe it's not Sting. Maybe Sting is part of this in some weird way, but maybe the bigger part of it is that, it's like winter is coming. We are going to do a giant Game of Thrones type storyline where the Iron Throne is basically the best in the world. Who is the best in the world? Is it Okada? Is it Ibushi? Is it Omega? Is it, and you could make the case, I firmly believe, for Moxley. Is it somebody else? Is it somebody who we don't even know about? And then you can get into like who the different characters are in some ways. If of like who's Jon Snow, for example, because that's kind of important. Who fills the role, because of course it's not going to be a woman, but of Danny, because that's kind of important. Who are these different people? Who are all of these people? And I think that's an interesting thing. It was, like I said, it was something I thought about. Didn't write anything down. That was just me kind of just throwing the ideas out there. But I thought it was interesting. It was just one of those what if, because in my mind, and I've talked about this on Twitter thousands of times, pro wrestling is still way behind, and pro wrestling probably because of this, the way pro wrestling is always going to be behind, like TV trends, right? Because they're like, okay, we're going to do a sports, even WWE, even though it sometimes is so far from sports and it's so far from a sports presentation, it still does things like a sport, right? It does things as like an over-the-top UFC, for example. So you have that part of it, and to that extent, I would still say they're a little behind, but not as far behind. But if you go to the storytelling aspect, if you go to the soap opera-esque aspect of pro wrestling, pretty much everybody is like 20 years behind when it comes to TV. TV has progressed. This is probably the biggest problem with, I shouldn't say 20 years. They're probably 10 years behind. WWE is probably about 20 years behind. Because they've not progressed. It's like all of these shows that have come along in the last 20 years never existed. That basically very much changed the way that TV shows are done, that stories are told on TV. The fact that, now you have you might have continually storylines on some TV programs, but they were like it's like, unless they were like a Dallas or, basically a primetime soap opera type show, you didn't have like a lot of long-standing storylines. You might have some, things that continued, but nothing major. And then like Mad Men came along. And then, of course, and you progress from Mad Men, and you keep going until you get to Game of Thrones. Without a doubt, Lucha Underground tried this, but then they went completely overboard in trying this and said, we're going to go completely like a live action, even over the top comic book. They went even, which you just can't do. You can't do that unless you're doing a superhero movie. It just didn't work because it's like, I don't think that's necessarily what pro wrestling fans want. They're willing to give you a little leeway. I think if they had kept the complete crazy stuff with Mel Mortis and with I can't even think of the girl that he was with, and then like that part of it, if that had been primarily, and then maybe you had the whole thing with the different tribes, but you kind of kept it in the background and it wasn't like in your face, and we didn't go into gloves and go infinity gauntlets and all that craziness. No, if you just kept it one or two people that you have the over the top with, people were like, oh, we can go with that. We dealt with the Undertaker, we can deal with this. But that's not what they did. I think you can do this. You can do like Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones is very much, if you don't know, is Martin's version. It's his ode to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. More Lord of the Rings. And if you really study them, you can kind of see, it's way off. There's two major ones that are really based on that. You've got Game of Thrones, Fire and Ice, Song of Fire and Ice, and you have Wheel of Time. It's funny because they're both super long, like Game of Fire and Ice or Song of Fire and Ice isn't even done yet, may never get done, and then Wheel of Time is like 13 books, very good, absolutely. Like, there are complete books in which nothing seems to happen. It pays off in the end, but you have whole books, and these are like 13 books, and you have there's a stretch of books where it seems like nothing happens in these books. There's very little like progression. Now at the end, all of that winds up being important, but it's very, very long. Where Lord of the Rings is just very hard to read because of the way he wrote it and all of that, and it was never really written to be published and all of that garbage. But anyways, you could definitely do this. You could definitely, and they're both a little bit more gritty. They're both like not like there's not a whole lot of magic. There's magic, but there's not a lot of magic in either one. Like in Game of Thrones, there's almost no magic. There's magic, but there's like very little magic, very low magic world. Wheel of Time, a little bit more, still not a lot. But still, you can do this. You can basically say, hey, we're going to figure out in the end who is the best wrestler in the world. We're going to do this cross-promotion storyline, and then we can do this. And you can do this. And I firmly believe that. Now, that's a lot. That's a lot for Tony Khan or whoever to come up with. It's like, we should do this big, long, massive thing, and super drawn out, and everyone has to be on the same. That's the other thing. Everyone has to be on the same page and all of this stuff. So that's probably really wishing it, but it's an interesting thought. And there's one I had. I was like, maybe it's not Sting. Maybe the Sting thing is just like whatever. The Sting thing was not whatever. The Sting thing was awesome. Even my wife like marked out. She usually watches Dynamite with me, and she's not a huge wrestling fan. So, like, she'll get kind of bored with it. But then Sting showed up, and she was like, what's going on? And she goes, did you know he was going to be here? And I'm like, there were rumors, but no one knew for sure. But here he is. And Tony Schiavone just losing his mind and was so happy. And it was a great moment. There's no question about that. And then you had the main event, which I didn't really care for because I thought the ending was a little too, like, there was a little too much going on, and it not that it was a screw, because I think you can, with the story that it seems like they're trying to tell just on the surface, you needed the screw job ending, right? So that's fine, but it just went on for so long, and it was just like, what's going on? And it needed to like just be a little bit more snappy, I think, but it was what it was. But anyways, that's just kind of my thoughts. Wondering what you guys think. I really do. I know I don't normally say that, but just especially if you're aware of like the whole Game of Thrones, Song of Fire and Ice, you understand all of that. What do you think? What do you think that is there a possibility this could be a thing where this is more of the starting off point of like I said, the battle for the Iron Throne, to see who is the best wrestler in the world. Forget promotions, just who is the best wrestler in the world. Which is kind of my thoughts. So, anyways, that is that. I do promise I'm trying to figure out a way where I can put up a lot more videos. It's just really hard because most of you that watch this know that I, for the most part, not really retail, but I work in a retail type job, and so this time of year is just always insane. And the way my work schedule works out, plus family life, it's not that it's hard for me to do videos. It's just there's a certain set time where I can do videos, and it's not always easy to do that. But I'm trying to figure out a way to do it, plus things I can watch and maybe review, because I'd much rather review things than just, try to find, come on here and talk about things that people have already talked like 50,000 times, like, Sting and the whole Impact and AEW thing, where I will say I think that everybody is absolutely right. Impact gets a much bigger boost, so why do you care about what AEW, what does AEW to get? I really do think AEW gets access to talent and Impact that they want to use. The Good Brothers, for example. Eddie Edwards would be a really good, especially if maybe somebody else is getting ready to come back and they're like, hey, we could kind of use Eddie Edwards because we kind of need Eddie Edwards if this other person comes back. That sort of thing. Not that, especially if there's another side to it, and basically maybe you had a tag team version of it where maybe the Young Bucks and FTR decide, hey, we're just gonna wrestle everybody. We're gonna prove without a shadow of a doubt that we're the best, absolutely best. Which I think would be awesome, especially if you do all that. They beat everybody and all these other promotions, and then it gets down to it, and they're like, see, we finally proved we're the best. And guess what happens? The Briscoes come out and say, what about us? So there you go. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.